Thank you, Baba, for our stay and all that you bring to us, the sharing that we've had, and for everybody's health and ability to come to this, and pray that it might be meaningful to those that need to get something out of it. In thy name, amen. I would say I'll start this way on a Christian note, which is deep in me too. This is, I brought it, this is a t-shirt, and the t-shirt is Christ, and below is the Apostle Paul. It is a portrait of his transcendence into the spiritual world. In the terms of this talk, God's gift, Baba's gift of consciousness. So, I'll leave it there. All right, let's go ahead. This world will focus this talk entirely, pretty much, on the world inside us. It's a journey of the mind. Now, this talk is essentially a summary of my life and my career, so it's dense. There's lots of meanings in here, and people, I guess, will get what they are to get. But I would say stay with me because there's an awful lot of meaning in here. So we'll start with a brief look back. One of our folks mentions about smoking, and we will start there because it's part of my career. I won't go into hardly any depth, but it's worth a summary because it relates to the talk. God's gift of consciousness. I started a quit smoking program in 1999. It was based on this talk, and it had to do with making people conscious of smoking cigarettes. I don't know why I picked cigarettes. It popped in my head, and it took off. And so I started to write this in about 3 days. It's 6 talks, 2 a week for 3 weeks. And they're the results. It ran in 2 of the major hospitals in Columbia, South Carolina, where I've lived. They're now Prisma Health, and one is Richmond Memorial, and the other is Baptist Hospital. The program, the quit smoking program that this is, ran for, I think, 19 years there, and the rates are there. Anywhere from 77 to 89% of people that took the program, which was always free, quit smoking at the end of the 3 weeks of the program. And I did those numbers once a year. We accumulated all the people that were there that year, and that's what it comes to. Anywhere from 77% of them had quit to 89%, depending on the year. And then on the second thing, 6 months to 2 years later, I had medical students call the smokers that had finished the program to see if they started smoking again. And over 50% of them had never smoked again. So those numbers, in summarizing that program on consciousness, God's gift, Baba's gift of consciousness, were 400 to 600 times better than the national averages for quit smoking programs. So this talk is about that stuff. All right, let's go. The world can be hard on us. My God, here it comes again. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Damn, I've lost my hairpin, she says. And the caption is missing, I think. It says, this is what birds look at. And she says, are they on there? No, I'm sorry. They say, it says, can't you wait until the commercial? Okay, so now the world. We live in a confused world, a world of chaos. Without a doubt, that's so. We also live in a world inside us, God's kingdom. And that is our mind and the spirit within us. That's inside us, a different world. So let's look at the two worlds. The world everybody knows, and the world everybody knows only, it seems, with exceptions obviously, but generally, most everybody knows what's out here, and that's it. Okay, the world outside yourself, it's in time. Everything changes in time. Always changes. Unpredictable, you know. Today I wonder if something surprised us that we didn't expect. It's unpredictable in the world out here. And chaos, and it's broken. Lots and lots of sad, broken things. God's world, Baba's world, by contrast, is inside yourself. It is not dependent on time. The word that fits there is eternal. It is eternity. It's that kind of non-time. It does not change. Wisdom is the same 3,000, 4,000 years ago as it is today. God's world doesn't change. It is predictable. You do what you're supposed to do and you'll have a good life. With some outside trouble, but by and large, sustainingly a good life. And unlike chaos and brokenness, in God's world, wisdom is the name of the tune. So they're different worlds, but they're going on all the time, both worlds. And most people aren't so good at noticing what's going on inside of them. So it really doesn't much exist. And then if God is dead, there's no reason to do this inside much. Okay, so eternity has no time. You see God versus illusion, reality, imagination, everlasting, ephemeral, freedom, binding, unchangeable, ever-changing, independent, dependent, imperceptible, deceptive. These are distinctions further from the inside versus the outside world. The life within you, and if anybody wants to pop in, jump in by all means. Life is lived in the mind. Now, it's taken me 15 years of my own personal journey to be convinced that that's true, that life is lived in the mind. And as this talk goes on, hopefully it'll be a little clearer why I say that. Two parts of consciousness. This is an important slide. Your thoughts, which are jumping around all the time, and you, the thinker. In Bible terms, we talk about God is within us, the Holy Spirit. You, the thinker, in this talk is largely equivalent to we're made in the image of God. We're made in the image of God, and Baba says that we all will eventually be in God. His comment, don't worry, be happy, is entirely because of that, because he says that sooner or later you won't be in time anymore because you'll be one with the Lord. So, you the thinker versus your thoughts, very big thing. All right, let's start with thoughts. And there's some of you who've been in psychotherapy. There's a bit of a review. This is called cognitive therapy, and many of us know about it. What people believe is true for them, that's a very important slide, because I see this in arguments all the time. When people are disagreeing, It's because the view they're in is right to them. I believe this. You got to listen to me. Follow what I'm saying. In other words, what people believe is true for them. Cognitive therapy in simple terms, this goes back to the 50s. Outside events are starting places. They trigger your thoughts, they trigger. And when you have thoughts, you have feelings that come from the thoughts. Finally, your actions tend to be affected by the thoughts you have and the feelings that they create in you. You're more likely to do something. And here's an example. Oh, I should say, our thoughts can be wrong, certainly. We may react quickly. We don't stop to consider, which is consciousness now. And we don't stop to consider, to think long enough. Okay. So I'll let that sit a second. Those that are visually astute will get it quick. Some will need time. I need a little time. But that's the point I'm making. Yeah. Do you see it now? What people believe is true for them, and so there's the bug. Yeah, yes, on his glasses. All right. So this is another way of saying a profound point. The problem is that we see one view, buy into it, and it may be right. But then we think it's the truth. It's the only truth. We see a view and yes, that's right. Immediately it becomes the only truth. And that's where people argue, right there. For example, someone's mad at you, and there he is. Doesn't he look nasty? All right, you might think to yourself, back to the thoughts now, you might think to yourself, how dare him? He has no right to talk to me like that. Or you might think, gee, he's right, I'm no good at nothing. Not much. Or you might think, I hope he didn't take a swing at me. Or you might think, I need to calm him down. Well, you could have any number of thoughts about the triggering event, the angry man. So, it could be any of these. How dare him? He shouldn't talk to me like that. Oh boy, he's got me, I'm nothing. Or, I hope he don't swing at me. Or, I need to calm him, he's sure upset. Okay, so once again, triggering event, in this case, the man's angry at you. Then you have thoughts, feelings come from it, and then you may take action, typically often do. An argument against judgment. There are many ways to see things, and each view may be true. You know, if you don't take the view you're in as sacred, in other words, it's right, but it doesn't mean it's the only way to see it. And then you go, well, how else could I look at this? In other words, I may want to harmonize how upset I'm getting. And then you just sit. We'll talk on this a little. Another thought will come to you, and then you look at it, is that true? And if it is, you cool down. You're not locked into one view. So there's an argument against judgment. There are many ways to see things that can't be true. Each view is a different way to see it, which will slow you up from getting hopped up, worked up. But what you believe becomes your reality. It's in the mind again, but if you say, whoa, that shouldn't have happened, then you stay there, you're going to get more emotional. Believing, it brings it to you, it makes it real. Believing something makes it real, and it strengthens it in you. So beliefs are large, large things. And they're all going on inside our heads. Most people don't notice them. They react from them because they live in the mind. But they're accountable for what they're seeing or hearing or smelling out here. That's what's wrong there. Oh gosh, it's jumping on me. See if I can go back. All right, I just basically said that. We rarely notice the thoughts we have about an upsetting event. To me, one of the great tragedies of my life in living in this world now is that people aren't factoring the meanings they're giving what's happening. They're factoring only what's out there. Then they can get stirred and upset and all the rest based on out here all the time. People live like that. But we rarely notice the meanings, the thoughts we're giving, what we're seeing and hearing and smelling. So which is more upsetting then, in summary? The guy who's mad at you, or the thoughts you have about the guy who's mad at you? Good question, really it is. Which is more upsetting? Most people would say he shouldn't have gotten mad at me. It's him, he's the fault. Well, let's see. Staying upset. You notice the trouble, the guy's mad at you. But if you stay on it in your mind, you stay focused on him, on the trouble, see what you're doing. You're digging a hole for yourself. It's your thinking that's digging the hole. He did wrong, but take a look at how you stay upset. So dwelling on an upset takes you here. And most people are either angry or frightened, anxious, or depressed, or any amalgamation. By dwelling and dwelling on something that bothered them, they get more bothered. That's right. So when you dwell on an upset, there we go. Again, most of them will say that shouldn't have happened to me, but I'd say, well, what are you doing in your head about it? How much of that is causing your stockpile of dirt? So how do most influence our lives? Let's go into this. You are mostly responsible for how you feel. I've done nothing wrong. Versus, I need to see my part and fix it. That's right. In Bible terms, that's being repentant. Repentance. Repentance is seeing your mistake, your sin, missing the mark, whatever you want to call it, and then squaring up and gradually fixing it. Baba's the same. You want to be more and more loving. That's the same route. You become more accountable to yourself for your upsets. If you can't change a situation, change your mind. Oh, that's right. God's blessings. We'll get into that. Change your thoughts and begin to feel better. Baba's comment, don't worry, be happy. Baba's gift of consciousness. Baba gives us far more ability than we realize, and I highlight that word, realize. We'll get into that. Baba gives us far more ability than we realize to better access God's blessings. That's true. So now let's go to you, the thinker. We talked about your thoughts up to now. Now we're going to talk about you, the thinker, again in Bible terms. It said, we are made in the image of God. So now you, the thinker. Reality is created by the mind. We can change our reality by changing our mind. That's Plato, that's ancient. That's wisdom. That's been true throughout time. When does the mind stop and the spirit begin? That's a question I keep wondering in my heart. A sense of separation from God is the only lack you really need to correct. I do agree with that. When we're separated from that which is within us, we're going astray. In other words, the more we're caught up in the world, the more we tend to have issues, troubles. That's true. Okay, another big slide. Outside versus inside reality. Back again to this. The brain, we could say, is the physical side, the outside, the world side. The mind is inside. Let me comment on that slide. I taught at the medical school for 20-some years here, and physical is lots of things. And they can now, as you all probably know, they can use all kinds of sophisticated technology to tell when pieces of the brain may be lighting up. In other words, they can give you some sense of what side of the brain suggests this or that function. That is quite true. And in other words, when they look at the brain, they can say some things as we can see advances in the world. The technology is wonderful. However, let me ask all of you, that's 6 of you sitting here, what am I thinking right now? Anybody?
I think you're thinking, I'm wondering what they're thinking.
All right, and somebody else? What am I thinking right now?
Wondering why I want to answer you.
Okay, so nobody's close. What I'm thinking in my mind is I like that picture of Baba relaxing in the back wall. He's sitting there, all just as relaxed. Okay, the point is this. There's nobody that can tell me what I'm thinking. Now, I can give facial expressions and people can get some sense of it, but I'm making a profound point. There's a difference between the brain and the mind. The inside versus the outside. The mind is not available for any kind of process we have in the world. My thoughts are my own and they're within me, and they're very real. I've been telling you up to now in this talk that life is lived in the mind. It is. The meanings you give what's happening will affect how you feel and what you do every day, every minute of your life. Inside directs outside. And nobody can tell me what I'm thinking except me. Now that's a big statement. You want to take that home and play with it in your head.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what if the physical brain itself is impaired, and now the correlation
It's
between
related. That's a
the
good
mind
question.
and the
They're
brain?
related. The brain, we can deduce, is related to the mind, and that's a good point. If the brain has been injured, the thinking of the person will be altered. There's a correlation. In other words, there's a relationship between the two. But there's still a vast, you could say infinite distinction between the life in the mind and what happens with the brain. And there are exceptions, as in a bad brain injury. And then we could go into any number of things, particularly in the Bible literature, to see that, any number of things could be happening. The Mus, who, by Baba's definition, he could discriminate those that were out of their minds and just crazy people, as in your example, from maybe brain injury, from those that were seemingly out of their minds and yet at a very high level of consciousness. So that would be a good answer, I think, in Baba's literature to answer you. But that's a good, I'm glad you brought it up. I normally try to remember to say it and I didn't. Okay, yes.
There's a quote where in this discourse by Baba called True Spirituality. It's at the end of Sparks of the Truth. There's one line where Baba says, spiritual progress is a radical transformation in the very structure and attitude of the functioning consciousness. What do you understand Baba to mean when he says structure? I mean, attitude I can understand. You can change your attitude. What does he refer to when he says structure?
You know, you asked it so exactly that you stopped me from giving an answer earlier in my head. I mean, I think it is a radical transformation when you get more in this world as we're discussing it, and as I like to think I'm living it more and more. But in terms of structure, I don't think I can answer you. I don't know what that would mean.
Yeah, someone suggested that it refers to your thinking, your feeling, your behavior, your interpretation of life, your reaction. But I think those things have more to do with attitude than they do structure.
I agree
would
with
think.
you. Yeah, structure leaves me cold, like I think you're saying. I don't know how to answer you. Structure.
And it almost has a feeling like you're talking about the brain. The brain has different structures.
Yeah.
If it's injured or
Yeah.
if it has
Structure seemed like it has a physical kind of location. I agree, but I can't answer you.
Yeah.
It's maybe the very thing that links the brain to the mind. That's, you know, we see related is something in structure that I can't relate to. I have no way of, but that's quite a thing you pulled out of your head. That statement.
No, I've been
there.
thinking about this. I thought you might have an answer.
No,
No,
I think you were meant to say that.
Yeah.
It came right out of your head from one line in a book. That's pretty good, thank you.
Well, he has quite another. I mean, that's an incredible discourse.
Yes, it is.
Basically, the whole discourse has to do with you have to lose all self-will. He says that in about 10 different ways. You know?
Yes. We'll get to that at the very end of this presentation, because that's a step beyond what I give when I give this talk from the Bible. It's a step from there. Yeah, thank you. Well, that's quite a lot said. Okay, so we can always change what we think, and that is true. To change your thoughts, you have to be aware of them. And I'm back to that earlier comment. Most people aren't connecting the thoughts they're having, the meanings they're giving to their experience of living. They're always out here and this is what's happening. No, this is what's happening along with the meanings you give it. Then you have feelings, then you're likely to take action. So you have to be aware of your thoughts if you want to change them. And there's where I'd say a majority of people go bad, because they're not aware enough to do anything but react all the time to what's outside of them. So we're made in the image of God. Back to that slide from that I commented from the Bible. You, the thinker, versus your thoughts. This is a key point. You, the thinker, are in fact distinct from your thoughts. Consciousness brings us to the light. It does. You, the thinker, let me say a word or two. Again, in the image of God, you, the thinker. It's a Buddhist principle. I think they're the most famous for this. But what it is where you can detach and see what you're thinking. You just detach and tune into what's in your head. When you do that, you're the thinker watching your thoughts. It's a key step. Now you're accountable, responsible for the thoughts you're having, the meanings you're putting on, what triggered them, what's out here. You, the thinker, versus your thoughts. Okay, And that brings you into the light. It brings you into consciousness. Why is consciousness a gift of God? I can answer that. And for our newcomers, that was a picture of Mayor Baba in the light. To me, it fits the slide of consciousness, brings us to the light, and Baba, who had all kinds of light connected to him. Baba's gift of consciousness. Now notice the meaning here. Why is consciousness a gift of God? Because you can be conscious anywhere. You can do this. You can be conscious any time of day you can do this. It's free. There's no cost in money to doing it. No one can stop you from thinking conscious except you yourself. Only you can stop you from thinking conscious on anything. And finally, why is it a gift of God? Because it works. It reliably works. It's a gift unlike any gift you're ever going to get. It comes with you as a human being. Use it anywhere, anytime. It's free. Only you can stop you, and it works. God's gift of consciousness. So once again, there are two parts of consciousness, your thoughts and you, the thinker. So to be the thinker, there are two major pieces, and they're critical. Aware of the outside situation, everybody's that, but also aware of your thoughts about it. When you can do both, see what everybody sees, hears, and smells, and then what you're doing with it, the thoughts you're having, the meaning you're giving, you're in God's world, God's gift of consciousness. Big slide again. You, the thinker, are always, we say you never use always, there's always an exception. Not on this one. You, the thinker, are always stronger than your thoughts. And that's made in the image of God. When you're here, you're in the image of God, and you're in God's world of love. You, the thinker, are always stronger than your thoughts. Too often we become our upsetting thoughts. There we go again, living upset all the time. I've had couples in therapy that are going back to something 7 years ago and still having a fight about it. It's a good example. They're living in the thoughts rather than what's going on today. You see that. Too often we become our upsetting thoughts. So we can create endless meanings, as I say. There are many ways to see things that are true about any event, person in our lives. When aware of your thoughts, you are not trapped in them. You can think your way out of them. You can change your mind. You, the thinker, can do that. If you're in the middle of your thoughts, you can't do much of anything but be captured. Baba quote, "I'm nearer to you than your own breath. Remember me and I'm with you and my love will guide you." You could say, the Holy Spirit is with you always. That's right. That's right. One of the people I most admire in the Bible is Paul, because as in the shirt, when he saw the Christ, he was persecuting them, And he was utterly different, and at one point he said, in the Bible, it's in the book of Galatians, chapter 2, he said, I no longer live, Christ lives in me. And all the letters that he wrote are like that. He was transformed. He was no longer the ego. He was no longer Paul the person. He was lost in the Holy Spirit within him. I'm nearer than your own breath, you can say. In the Spirit more and more is the right way to live. It's a growth towards God. Things that are real are sent and received in silence, one of Bob's famous quotes. That's true. When we talk about how to be more realized, we'll talk about that a little bit. How to become more the thinker, not trapped in your thoughts. Clearly, if you're with me, that's what we're saying. It's what we want. Christ, be in the world, not of it, is a profound statement, and it's true. You want to be able to see what's there. You don't want to miss anything. But you don't want to be in the middle of it out there. You want to be here and see what's going on. Be in the world, not of it. So, back to detachment. For the thinker, we want to detach. We want to step back and watch our thoughts. When we see something that's bothered us or whatever, we want to be able to detach, as the Buddhists say, and see what's going in our head. Now we're seeing what we're making of it, the interpretations, the meanings we're putting on what's out here that we're reacting to. So detachment's a big piece. It gives you perspective. There's less emotion controlling you, as in here. Einstein, it's a great quote. It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. That's right. That's right. That's another way of saying what I said. You get to feeling, you want to tend to step back and see what you're thinking, and then things start to happen. When more aware, there's more choices you have, better decisions, more freedom. All that's true. God's gift of consciousness being used. Duration's important, sort of side point. But the quicker you remove your troubling thoughts, so you get upset, and you can't always do this right away because you're upset, and then that's okay. But when you get a little cooler, you can do this. The quicker you can step back and do what I was just saying, the less power these feelings that come from the quick thoughts have over you. So duration is important. The longer you dwell on a problem, the bigger the problem is for you. It's true. Get your mind somewhere else until you cool down. It's a good piece of advice. If an emotion stays strong, I've got two of the same kind of, then you can go back and look at whatever it was. By being more conscious, you might discover, this is a Gandhi quote, it's well worth saying to you. I have three enemies. My favorite enemy, the one most easily influenced for the better, is the British Empire. My second enemy, the Indian people, far more difficult. But my most formidable opponent is a man named Mohandas Gandhi. With him, I seem to have very little influence. It's the essence of the talk. You are accountable for how you feel and what you do. And he is saying it just right. That the more you can see, I guess in Bible terms, you could say the more you see what's wrong with you, then the more you can repent and work on it. the better you become gradually. And then an old cartoon, we've met the enemy, and he is us. So sustaining a change now, this is another, I think, big thing. It requires a conscious mind over time. And this we'll talk about a little bit. Again, this is dense, this presentation. There's a lot in here, so I'm not apologizing because a lot of it's, I mean, you take what you need. In the beginning, everything starts this way. Words and thoughts begin anything new. I'm sure some of the great songs began with, maybe a lyric sound or a piece of music sound and then the words. Words and thoughts begin everything. Then come ideas. Ideas are weak. Ideas are a necessary step. You come up with a good idea and you go, yeah, I want to do that. It's necessary, but it's insufficient. It's weak. It'll go away. Nothing will come of it. Often that's the case because ideas are weak. New Year's resolutions, yeah. Yeah, it turns out that about 90% of the time, New Year's resolutions do not stick. And the reason they don't stick is because you began with a good idea, but it was weak. And unless you develop it, it ain't sticking. So the third step is to make ideas meaningful. And that's part of detaching. Step back, detach from your thoughts, and then you can say, what are you thinking? And watch your thoughts. See, get clear on what's going on inside you. And here's a good slide. Now it's dense, but here's a good slide. You sit quiet, watch your thoughts, as I said. Ask questions about a thought. What'll happen is you will answer yourself. Why did I do that? And then you sit, maybe 10 seconds, whatever. Something will come in. Well, I did it because. And you go, that's true. I guess that's true. Why else might I have done that? Then you sit quiet again. And maybe another 10, 20 seconds, and there's another one. Well, no, I don't think that's right. Is there any other reason I might have done that? And then you sit again a third time and wait. As ideas come to you that make sense, you're making more meaningful. It's starting to get thicker, taking more substance. And that's, you reflect on your answers and let your answers lead to more questions. That's the sequence. You sit with something important, you can begin to build it. Asking questions is a great strategy. Good psychotherapy does that. And then the two can talk without always questions. Freud's group would ask question after question, and it's important, but it won't change people. There's more involved. So it's a journey of the mind where you ask questions, you're reflecting, seeing what you're getting, build it. You're building it. As you ask more of your questions, you build meaning, you become more conscious of the issue you're wanting, and there's an image of it. We start with an important idea, oh, I want to do that. And then if you do the process in your mind, you end up with that, and that will be more substantial in helping you get the actions going. You're building it in your mind. So to make a change last, make your thoughts more meaningful, and lastly, realize the meaning. That's a transcendence there, to realize the meaning. This is something that's highly spiritual to me. I cannot dissect that in words or thoughts or meanings, when you realize something, you've arrived. And you get there. I can do it consciously. You get to realize by doing what I just told you. You build it. And I don't mean homework 30 minutes a day like sometimes people tell you. You play with it. What I do is maybe something important will hit me, and then maybe 4 hours later, I'll do it. Think about it more, and maybe sometimes a new thing will come related to it, and that's good. Maybe at the end of the day or the next day, I might do it again, and now here's some more. And over a week or so, it's gotten kind of substantial, that thicker tree, and that's how I like to go. And there are a lot of things going on here since I've been at the center that I've been playing with just over the last day that just hits me real strong through Baba. And I've been going in and out of it all day, just comfortably. It's not work. It's not work at all. So let's look at realizing. Baba's comment in God Speaks. The goal is not to understand the infinite eternal reality. It is to be realized by conscious experience. And that's quite a thought. The conclusion of God Speaks. We won't go there because I can zap your brain trust if I've given you plenty already. I want to get some more here though. Stay with me. To realize meanings takes time. That's right. Now, as I've been saying, to realize, visit what you made meaningful over time, a moment here and there. It gets strong, it gets more cemented in as you reflect. So steps to transformation. Begin with words and thoughts, then come ideas which are weak, make meaningful. And I've given you some of that, then realize meanings. When you get there, you're different. You're not quite the same person if what you realized was important to you. It's not small. I know in some ways the Branham family had recently lost a very important person, a husband and a father, and he was realized, and it mattered greatly, as opposed to he was a member of the family. Now I'm going to give you an example of realizing. This one to me is a good one. It's from the Bible, but it's a very good one. The Wilderness Journey from the book of Exodus. Let's look at it briefly. This is the business where the Jewish race, Moses took them out of Egypt, and they got to the Red Sea, and it parted, and they crossed over, and they went into the desert. Now they're in the desert, and what I'm going to talk about is that. They're in the desert, okay? So I read this story, here and there throughout my life, I don't know, 5 times. Saw 10 Commandments, I've been over and over again. I never got anything realized in the story. And this is a key point. I could tell you what happened, like most everybody can tell you what happened. Doesn't mean anything to what I'm talking about here. So let's look at realizing that story. So how did the people live in the desert? Big point. Well, here's how they lived. They saw sand everywhere. Manna, which came here and there from heaven. What were they? Honey waffles, as best I could tell. Honey wafers, I'm sorry. All the time. They had the same food, in other words, all the damn time. Sand everywhere they looked. They were bored. They didn't have much to do. Nowhere to go. In fact, a key point in the story is that God put them out of the world. Literally, there was no civilization of any kind. He took them out of the world, okay? All they saw was sand. All they ate was the same thing. And there was water here and there. God told them what to do. He told them to obey the commandments. There were 10 of them. So there it was in a nutshell. They're surrounded by sand, same junk food, nothing to do except obey God, do the commandments. And that's a summary, okay? Now, in terms of the talk, let's be clear. These people were in a world where there was very little, but they still were in their minds. They didn't lose their minds. They're still thinking like we're doing today. That part, the inside world, is going on for them. Now, the vast majority of them were not accountable. They were not aware of their own thoughts. So let's play the story. God's world. And he told them what to do, and this was it. Don't worship other gods. Don't lie. Don't steal. Don't covet your neighbor's house. Honor your father and mother. Don't commit adultery. Don't commit murder. He said, do that in the middle of all this place that doesn't seem to exist. That's what he told them to do. Okay. What was living their way like? Well, I think we know the story. As we guess today, wouldn't we? What happened? This is how they lived. Coveting, worshiping false gods, lying, get what you can. If caught, then what? Well, stealing, murdering, adultery. Hey, that's fun. So we got all this happening, totally against what they were told to do, and they weren't told to do a whole lot. It was easy to remember. So this is what they did as per their thinking. They created, in other words, another Egypt in the desert. The world they knew, they recreated it in the desert, which didn't have a world. That's what they did. So here it is. All right, had they been accountable, here's how it would have gone. They'd have gradually been more loving to one another. It wouldn't have been quite easy, because they weren't ever like that. But he says, obey me, and had they obeyed him, it would have been hit and miss, right? They'd have done good and probably felt kind of nice that, hey, somebody's happier. But then they'd have gone back, because they're automatic, they're conditioned, they're trained, and it would have been back and forth. But gradually, if they'd have obeyed, they'd have gradually gotten more loving. They wouldn't have been as selfish. Families would have been treated well. There wouldn't have been lying, cheating, murders. They'd have helped each other when somebody was sick. Gradually, we'd see more and more, and it would vary from person to person, but if they obeyed, they would have changed their minds. And as a result, they would have been in paradise. That's fact. But all they saw was sand. It's a summary of the talk. Back then, same as now. So, why is life so hard? The world will always be a terrible place. It's out here, nothing else. Or, why is life so hard? Because, oh, I'm repeating the slide, sorry. Life is so hard because we still think in the same reactive way. We still think quick, non-reflectively. We still see too much sand. God is, Baba is, life, love, light, spirit, truth. Take any one of them, that's right. It's a giant slide. life, love, truth, spirit, light. Real happiness lies in making others happy. Or, as Mother Teresa said nicely, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other.